He's not.
Well, thank you so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate it. Just a quick announcement, we are recording tonight, so if you could keep your sidebar conversations to a minimum, just so that we can make sure the camera picks up what's being said.
Silence your phones, that would be awesome.
That as well, please. I'm good. All right. My name is Larry Gilman. For those who don't know me, I'm the chair of the Will County Progressives. We are here every Friday night at 7 o'clock with different guests, and tonight we have a very special guest. Just a couple of quick announcements. We have a special Saturday night social tomorrow night here at 7:30. We'll be joined by J.D. Pritzker, another candidate for governor. A couple of events tomorrow at 10 a.m. at Prairie State College in Chicago Heights. There's a governor's candidate forum, so all of the candidates will be speaking there. Also at the same time, 10 a.m. at the Rasmussen College in Bolingbrook, the Illinois Democratic Women of Will are having their summer meeting and legislative session. So two events that, if you can make one, would be very good. A couple of quick organizational announcements. We have a new board member, Loretta Westbrooks. And also we have a new vice chair, Susanna Ibarra.
So we are the Will County Progressives. We started with the Bernie Sanders campaign in 2016. As you know, Bernie Sanders won Will County by 3,000 votes. So, yes, thank you. You're glad for that. We go on to get the nomination. However, we were, by the beginning of the campaign, we were pretty green, and by the end of the campaign, we were seasoned door knockers, phone bankers, and everything you can imagine. We decided to keep it going, and we started the Will County Progressives. Larry, myself, and Rebecca are the three founding original members still that are in the group, and we've had some amazing additions. Loretta's an amazing addition, Terry's an amazing addition, and we have a lot of plans moving forward. We've already started to work with other groups. The Spanish Center, just so everybody knows, they're getting ready to actually close their doors, the Spanish Center in Joliet, so I did ask for people to bring items that we can donate to their sale. Their sale is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, all day, morning to night. They give some of the most important immigration services in Will County, the substantial ones. So we would like them to keep their doors open, and moving forward, we're making some donations. Some of us are working to, yes. Come on.
Also, the Spanish Center is being really creative. So besides this giant garage sale that they're having, they are doing something called 100 and 100. So they're looking for 100 businesses that are willing to sponsor them, essentially pledge $100 a month for whatever to help them keep their doors open. So if you know people, small business, etc., that might want to be part of that, please let us know and we'll pass that on to Angel.
So we did not have Chris Kennedy confirmed, and I went to a Ridge Township Democrats Gubernatorial Candidate Forum and hunted down Mario Lopez and wouldn't take no for an answer until we had a date for Chris Kennedy because we had so many requests for him to come here. So without any further ado, our distinguished guest, Chris Kennedy.
Okay, I think the beer is a really good idea. It's hard to figure out why, some groups have great turnout and others don't. I think it's the beer. A story about that you all got together with Bernie Sanders reminded me. I have a senior in high school. She's going to be a freshman in college, and she played field hockey, which is a fall sport. So in the fall of the previous year, I guess, she was playing Oak Park River Forest High School in field hockey. And New Trier and Oak Park River Forest had a huge rivalry. And so it was a big tournament. In between the games, we went across the street, the little outdoor park there. And there was somebody with a clipboard, and they were trying to get Bernie on the ballot here in Illinois. And so they asked us to sign. I signed it, and I gave it to my daughter. She's like, well, why are you signing that? Does this guy have any chance? I said, well, you should always give everybody a chance. Always, you never know what's going to happen. And it was a great lesson to her, and I think a great lesson for all of us, really. Another month, I think he probably would have won. And it's important to I think, remember the lessons of that election, which is not to let somebody else make the decision for the rest of us about who should be our champion, who should be our party's nominee, who should be our leader. So it's fun for me to be here. My first political speech in Illinois was, I'm pretty sure it was in Joliet Junior College. And I think, I may have been here for Ted Kennedy, but I was definitely here for Dukakis. I got a call about 5 in the morning from my older brother who was a congressman, and he served with George Sangmeister. And George was having an event at Joe Juco, and Joe couldn't get out of Boston or Washington. He called me, it was 5 in the morning, he says, will you go to Joliet Junior College and do an event for George Sangmeister? It was 5 in the morning, and none of those words made any sense to me. Who is this? This is Joe. So I said, okay, well, I'll do that. He said, well, I have a speech. I said, what am I supposed to say to that? He said, I got a speech, I'll fax it to your office. Fax it to my office. So I went over to the Merchandise Mart, 6 in the morning, and picked up this speech, and on the way down to Joliet, I read the speech, and it said, it's so great to be here with George Sangmeister today. We served together on the House Banking Committee. That's not going to work. George is my favorite other member of Congress. I was like, that's not going to work. George has sponsored all the bills that I think there's. I was like, my God. So on the way down, when there was plenty of traffic, I wrote a speech, and that was the first one I gave. So it's nice to be back, and I hope this one goes better than that one. So I'm the, I'll introduce myself, I guess. Is that what you'd like to do, and then do Q&A or something? Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
So I'm one of Bobby and Ethel Kennedy's 11 children. And when I was in, I'm 8th out of 11, so I'm down the line a ways. When I was in high school and college, my oldest brother, Joe Kennedy, started a not-for-profit oil company. I just lost half. Anyways, it's true. And it worked really well. So what he would do is he would buy oil. Then he would send it to a refinery and sell off gasoline and Vaseline and jet fuel and 30 other products that you make from oil. You would take the profit on that, pay for the home heating oil that was left over, and then distribute that to poor people in Massachusetts who needed help heating their homes during the cold winter. I thought, wow, he's like figured it all out. He's figured out a way to bend the rules of the economy to make it work again for everybody and not just the super rich. He's figured out a way to do the things our parents wanted us to do, to help other people without spending his days on the phone dialing for dollars. Wow, this is rough. I mean, it's like being late for class. I'm familiar with that movie, but I'm very Anyways, he figured this out, and I knew I want to do what he's done. I want to bend the rules of the economy. I want to help other people. I want to do what Joe's done. But I also had this clear vision in my mind, even at that age, that there was no way I was going to work for my older brother. So Reagan was the president of the United States at the time. He'd done something no other president in American history had ever done. He intentionally caused homelessness. He created hunger. Now, there had been homelessness and hunger in the United States since the country was founded, but never caused by the president, willfully so. These guys, you know, the economy, there was inflation, it was hurting people, I guess, but their solution was to put millions of people out of work, to drive up the interest rates. Well, it was 22%, bankrupt millions of businesses, put millions of people out of the work, and save the economy. I don't know what kind of thinking that is.
And bankrupt the savings and loans.
Exactly.
That was a federal savings and loan.
The collateral damage was unbelievable, and those jobs that they put people out of, they never came back. So there was hunger, and I wanted to go into the fight against hunger. Of course, I didn't know how to feed anybody. So I went around, I talked to a bunch of folks, and they said, well, why don't you get a job, learn something, and then go and help others? And I did. I got a job with ADM, and in 1986, I moved from Boston, Massachusetts to Decatur, Illinois. I like Decatur.
Yeah,
You know,
Decatur, all
has
right.
2 main streets. You can pick the one you like. But,
You know about it 30 miles before you ever get to it.
yeah, well, they had corporate housing, which was good because it was largely upwind of the Staley. Yeah, so it worked out pretty well for me. Then they moved me all around the Midwest, all around Illinois, buying soybeans and corn from farmers. And then I would buy corn and soybeans from small elevators like I was in the week before. Then I would go to these railheads and big production plants, spend some time in Peoria at the big alcohol plant. Have you guys ever been there? It's
Yes.
unbelievable. It's like the most dangerous place in the world because
Yes.
it's filled with corn dust and it's super flammable. If you like light a match, you blow up central Illinois. The thing is, they make alcohol there out of corn, and they put it on a barge. This is unbelievable. They send it down the Illinois River, then the Mississippi River, then out the Gulf of Mexico, across the Panama Canal, all the way to Japan. Once it arrives in Japan, they flavor it. Then they return it to the port of Los Angeles, where they sell it to people in California as sake. These guys have it figured out. Anyways, they moved me to Salina, Kansas, and Lincoln, Nebraska. I finally ended up at the Board of Trade, the Mercantile Exchange in Chicago, because they wanted me to understand how the futures markets work and how to hedge, I don't know, currencies and a whole series of other things. It was an unbelievable experience because in the 1980s, the Board of Trade, you could go down there and you could leave, I mean, you could walk in penniless and leave a millionaire. You could walk in a millionaire and leave penniless too, but mostly there was this incredible upward mobility. It's just like an incredible place, but it was sort of brutal too. There was a guy, he worked with me, he was the only guy in the other guy in the training program, and he was not very big, and he was bald, he was very fat, and he looked like Uncle Fester. He walks the first day of work, and some guy looks up to him and says, "Geez, Uncle Fester just walked in." And then everybody calls him Fester. It was unbelievable. It was like brutal about the guy. And he put up with it. He was a good sort. And they kept calling him Fester, which was a terrible mistake, because actually that fellow was an undercover FBI agent. Yeah, he was. And he indicted everybody who called him Fester. It's a great story of revenge. They all went to jail. I was like 23 or 24 years old. I just arrived in Chicago. Everybody I'm working with was going to jail. I'm like, this is a tough town. Plus they're all wearing a wire. So it scared me a little bit. I thought I better just, keep the straight and narrow here. I started working at the Merchandise Mart, which I eventually ran. This is like one of the great businesses in Illinois. It's really fun, and I loved every day I was there. While I was there, I volunteered at the Greater Chicago Food Depository. And I eventually became a board member and the chairman of the board. Then we doubled the size of the place, started the first fresh fruit and vegetable program, and a hiring program that trained people to work in the food service industry. We worked through about 700 soup kitchens and pantries, largely in Cook County. And they were designed to help people during that period of the Reagan administration where they lost jobs for a couple of weeks or a month or two. But as I said, those jobs never came back. So these soup kitchens and pantries, they've been feeding people not for days and weeks, but for months and years and now decades. And they were never designed to do that, and many of them are under great pressure to fail. About 5 years ago, my wife Sheila and I started Top Box Foods, which is it's a not-for-profit, but not really a charity. It operates like Citizens Energy. We sell food to people. Now we operate in food deserts, and they get about 40% off what they spend at a big grocery store and a much bigger discount to anything in their neighborhoods. And the quality of the food is really, really high because it never went through a grocery store. We operate through about 100, 120 different community organizations and churches, housing authorities, and stuff like that. The people there are clients, our customers. It's different. Our relationship is different with them than it was. My relationship was with the people who went to the soup kitchens and pantries. The soup kitchens and pantries, people, they've been beat down so bad by what the government did to them. Just beat down. And like, I couldn't believe what had occurred. And they'd see me and they wouldn't be able to look me in the eyes. They wouldn't be able to talk to me. They'd say, thank you, are you Mr. Kennedy? Thank you for helping me out. But they wouldn't look at me. They'd look at the floor. They'd have their chin on their chest. And I'd want to talk to them, but they wouldn't want to talk to me. At Top Box Foods, it's totally different. There you go out to a delivery, and like last Saturday was deliveries. My wife runs it now. She does a much better job than I ever did. Actually, last week, she did more volume in one day than we did the whole first year combined. Yeah, she's much better. Here. And people say to me, are you Mr. Kennedy? I say, yes, I am. Now they're looking me right in the eyes. They have no problem with that. Walk right up to me. Well, you say, I'm one of your clients. I say, well, thank you for being a customer. Like, yeah, well, listen, last week I bought a vegetable box, and you don't do a very good job with the broccoli. You need to do a better job with the broccoli. My wife picked out the broccoli. The people that we deal with are largely the people that this economy has left behind. My day job at building these apartment towers in downtown Chicago. The people we're dealing with, that's not going to be part of their lives. You should see the city center up there. It's unbelievable now. This is mile-long river walk. I don't know, it costs $150 million. The federal government paid for a lot of it. They'll never see that. We'll never see Magnificent Mile, all those shops. That's not going to be their world. And yet they think we're sort of all in it together. There are 100-year-old social service agencies, people like us, the Food Depository, Metropolitan Family Services, the Y, folks like that. The thing is, if you looked at the people in Chicago that we're serving in those communities, they look a lot like the people in the rest of the state. If you look demographically at them, they look almost exactly the same as people in southern Illinois or western Illinois. Now, the color of their skin is going to be different, largely, but for the things that matter, the things that really matter, like poverty or unemployment, the prospects for their kids, the likelihood that they lose a job, that they'll never get employed again, they look exactly the same. In fact, if you've got 2 columns of numbers describing those attributes, I guess, you couldn't tell them apart. The rest of the state, though, they don't have 100-year-old social service agencies as densely as we have in this area. We have, in this state, entire counties without a grocery store. People who get sick, they have to go 30 miles to a health care clinic. If they need something complicated done like imaging, it might be 50 miles. If they need help, if they need the police, they dial 911, nobody's coming. The local police forces have been decimated. There's no sheriff's deputies left. The state police, they've largely pulled out of the highway patrols. These people are on their own. There's no jobs. Their kids are going to have a heck of a time making it. They'll never make it in those communities. They'll have to move away. They're all afraid. They're like, what's going to happen? Our children are leaving. Our friends' children are leaving. We're all going to end up alone. And they're raging pissed. They're angry. Last fall, they go and they vote. They vote overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. They vote overwhelmingly for Donald Trump. They don't believe, I'm telling you, they don't believe the stuff that Trump says. They don't believe the Mexicans are here to sell us drugs. They don't believe the Muslims are here to bomb us. That's not what this is about. What they believe is that a bunch of political elites, people who are active in the party, got together and created an economy that's meant to crush them, to keep them down. That we've created a political establishment meant to exclude them. They have no voice. And that the only time our society, our social arrangement ever thinks of them is when they're made fun of on Saturday night television, where they're the butt of the joke. And they're like, if you guys are going to create an economy that doesn't work for us, we're going to send you a president that doesn't work for you. Have at it. And they send Donald Trump. They're pissed. They want the promise of this country to be kept. They want this country to be the land of opportunity. They like the notion of the American dream, a place where anybody can make it, where there's upward mobility. They know it didn't exist for every group at every time in American history, but they know that everybody wanted that, and they especially wanted it for themselves and for their kids. They say, what happened, Chris? What happened to the American dream? How come, like, your family, the Kennedy family, arrives here as an immigrant family, and they can rise from rags to riches? That can't happen anymore. What happened to that? The thing is, their gut instinct on all of this is absolutely right. 100% right. Today in the United States, if you're born poor, you will probably stay poor. If you're born rich, you'll probably remain rich. If you're born in between, you're going to have a life of constant threat and hazard. If you're born in between in the middle class, as most African Americans are, and you're African American, you have a much higher chance of dying poor than dying rich. That is nobody's idea of the American dream. It's a violation of any form of Abrahamic social justice. Abraham being somebody that the Catholics, Christians, Muslims, Jews all worship. It's a violation of everything that we think is right. If we don't restore the American dream, they'll send somebody worse than Donald Trump. And you think that's not possible, but there's worse people out there. Geez, Donald Trump you can't write a memo that man, that's short enough for him to read. You can't sit in that chair and listen to a CIA briefing. The most interesting facts in the world, something that all of us, everybody in this room would like to hear. We don't want to hear that. He won't do that. It's a terrible mistake because now the CIA briefings are all about his kids. He'll never figure out the levers of government. The next guy will. And when they come, they'll destroy our country. The root of all evil and all of this is what we're doing to our children. The reason we can't make it here anymore, the reason there's no upward mobility, the reason you can't rise from rags to riches is because of the terrible education we give our kids. There was this thing at the University of Illinois. They told me, I was chairman of the board there, and we were talking about why these kids couldn't get in from CPS. I said, well, you know, very few people at CPS graduate college ready. Their college readiness rate, they don't meet the hurdle. I said, what does that mean? I've never heard of that. Oh, that's a big number. It's like somewhere around a 21 on the ACT. If you don't get above that, you can't go to college or trade school without remedial education. And if you need that remedial education, it costs more to get through college. It takes longer. You have a much higher chance of dropping out. And then if you drop out, you've got nothing to show for it but debt and no degree. So most colleges won't accept anybody like that. I said, well, how does that work in the state of Illinois? Oh, well, 75% of the kids who graduate any public school in Illinois are not college ready. There are, I don't know, 50 maybe high schools in the city of Chicago where the average ACT score is a 14 or a 15. They can't work in my office. You score a 14, you can't really work in high-rise construction. Because the other people on the job, they want to know that you can read the warning label on the laser beam. They want to know that you're not going to kill them by making a mistake. You can't become a cop or a fireman. We're dooming these people to a life of economic servitude. Everybody in the state who's ever looked at this issue for more than 5 minutes knows that the reason that we have bad outcomes is because we don't fund the schools properly. We need to fund the schools with a progressive income tax at the state level. Everybody knows that. They know that there needs to be a basket of taxes that pay for the schools so that everybody has an equal chance. 100% of everybody who's looked at it knows that. And if you look at the other cities, the other states that have great educational outcomes, that's what they do. That's what they do in the other countries around the world. Everybody knows that. Every state rep, every state senator knows it. The only reason we don't switch when we have a Democratic supermajority in the House, and we had a Democratic supermajority in the House and one in the Senate, is because the leadership, a bunch of other electeds, have side jobs as property tax appeals lawyers. That's where they make their money. That's the source of their income. That's the foundation for their wealth. We're screwing 75% of the kids who graduate from our public high schools so a handful of elected officials can make money. That's wrong. In my opinion, if you're an elected official, you shouldn't have an outside job that's adverse to the interests of the body you were elected to serve. Fancy language for you should have a conflict of interest, which is sort of obtuse language for you shouldn't be a property tax appeals lawyer. That's, they're destroying this state. Because those kids, you cannot build an economy when 75% of the kids coming out of school can't participate in it. What are they going to do? Sell drugs or do them? One kid's going to end up dead, one's going to end up in jail. That's not the outcome that we want for our kids. And we need to fight back. We need to make this election about restoring the dignity of our kids and the dignity of our elected officials. We need to make this election about them giving up those careers. Make a decision. You want to be a property tax appeals lawyer, make millions of dollars a year, go for it. But you can't also be a state rep or a state senator. It's your choice. Every time you see one of them, ask them, would you support a ban? Would you support a ban on a conflict of interest? See what they say. And if they don't give you a good enough answer, ask them again. Show up the next week. Make them explain to you why they think it's okay to destroy the lives of the next generation of our state. Force these kids into a life of economic servitude and wreck our state so that a handful of them can make money. Don't allow it to happen. These are complicated times at the federal level, and they're complicated times at the state level. I'm sure we can fix every problem that we have, and I'd be happy to talk about any of that, but the most important thing is that we need to get it together. We need to get it together in Illinois. We need to remember the lessons that we were taught so long ago as young people and reminded of regularly. You know, the founding fathers, they gave us a slogan. They gave us a national motto that we should remember at a time like this. They said, out of many, one. And then we're all taught to, revere the life of President Abraham Lincoln, who gives his life to the cause he thinks is more important than any other, which was to keep the Union together and in so doing give everybody greater freedom. And then we're taught to admire the life of President Franklin Roosevelt, who, as one of the wealthiest men of his generation says in the 1940s, we all go up or we all go down, but we go together. A time like this, we need to remember. We need to remember that greater communal purpose that the founding fathers had for this country. We need to remember the lesson of Abraham Lincoln, which is that our own lives are not the most important thing in the life of our country. And we need to understand that we can empower, we can know politically connected people, we can be part of important organizations and still stand on the right side of history, just like President Roosevelt did. If we do those things, we could give our kids great jobs, we could give them long careers, we could keep them close to home, we could keep the promise of this country, and we can make sure that the American dream is the dream for all Americans. And that's why I'm running for governor. That's why I'd like your help. Thank you all very much.
Okay, we have some questions that were submitted take turns reading them for you, is that okay? What is your stance?
There was one here.
Oh, what
It
was it?
says, when does the pizza arrive?
What is your stance on the legalization of recreational cannabis? It has been a boom in Colorado for taxes.
So I'm a big believer in science and medicine. I think we should make a decision about legalization of marijuana from a scientific and medical perspective. We should understand what the impact is on the recovery community. We should understand whether we're helping our society or hurting it. And then we should make a decision. But we should not make a decision based on money. We shouldn't let taxes confuse our thinking about whether or not we should legalize marijuana. We should separate those decisions, make a rational decision, and move forward. I think there's plenty of money in this economy if we taxed it correctly. The idea that we should find some solution where none of us have to make any sacrifice, that's not who we are as Americans. It's not what we should be looking for. We should understand that when we passed the income tax, we were a state that, well, it made things. We were a producer of goods. We were a factory state. And we didn't tax services because the economy was all about production. So now, today, when 70% of the economy is services, we don't tax it. You cannot exist as a country, as a state, as a city, when you don't tax 70% of your economy. It doesn't work. Unless you're like Alaska and you get extraction and you can sell oil or something, but a regular state needs to tax everything. It's not that we need higher taxes, we need broader taxes. And they ought to be progressive.
Okay. Thank you very much. What is your plan to return borrowed monies to the Illinois pension plans?
My whole view of life is that we can organize almost all of our thinking about what's right and what's wrong if we think in terms of restoring the American dream. How do we fund education? Why would we do that? Because it restores the American dream. What should we do about higher ed, access to banking, anything in our economy? All of it relates to that notion of restoring the American dream. The American dream, though, has to sit on the rule of law. And if we don't respect the rule of law, nothing's going to work. If we take money from the pensions, if we flirt with the notion of changing the contractual obligation the state of Illinois has to all of the people who had a contract that gave them the right to those pensions when they worked for it, then we're putting our entire country at risk, and I don't think that's the right outcome. Getting like both sides.
As a state employee, I definitely appreciate that answer, and as someone who works in the prison system, it leads directly to this next question. How would you disrupt the sewer-to-prison pipeline?
I think unless we have to fund, we have to recognize that the school outcomes are terrible. That it's not the fault of the teachers, it's not the fault of the administration, it's the fault of the legislature that's not properly funding the schools. If we properly funded the schools, the kids would have a future, they'd have a choice. Economic oppression is the partner in crime to crime. Opportunity is the enemy of crime. And we're denying that opportunity to too many people. If we don't get rid of this property tax scam, if we don't get rid of that corruption, it will destroy our state. We need to stop those legislators from having the opportunity to make money off of property taxes. And they will give up a property tax-based funding model for our schools. If we restore funding to our schools, we'll have great outcomes for our kids. If we have great outcomes for our kids, we're not going to need as many prisons. My hope is to put you out of a job. And I'm wasn't sure you were.
You do, I thought I did.
There you go.
Another question on education. What do you think about Common Core?
I think the Common Core, if you look at the history of it, it was a series of Republican governors that were leading states with terrible outcomes for their schools. And so they tried to create a federal standard that would encourage the school districts to fully fund schools and have better educational outcomes for people stranded in areas outside of big cities. So I think they got off to, their ideals were correct. The idea that we should have higher standards were great, but they missed the point. The point isn't that we lack goals. The point isn't that we want good outcomes. The point isn't that we have failed to have ambition for our kids. The point is we haven't funded our damn schools. And we don't do that in Illinois because a handful of people make money on property tax businesses, and they're destroying our state.
What are your plans for expanding the use of renewable energy in Illinois?
I like that question. So the merchandise mart is the largest LEED certified building in the world. The building next door that we manage so the mart therefore is the largest LEED certified building in Chicago. And the building next door was the second largest LEED certified building in Chicago. So we were the first and second largest, the largest LEED certified hotel in the country at the time, and the first LEED certified hotel in Chicago. The things that we did there, and many of them involved renewables, but we were able to, we changed the cooling system in one fan room, say 5 million gallons of water a year. I think we're in like an incredible wind area. We know how to generate that here. And we have two great national energy labs, Argonne and Fermi, that have the capacity now to reinvent battery technology that will allow the renewables, particularly wind energy and solar, which is really powerful in southern Illinois, to be useful at times other than when the wind is blowing or the sun is shining. But Donald Trump has threatened the livelihood of both those energy labs. And probably none of you are aware of that because your elected representatives, your congressmen and senators aren't bringing that up. Because we rank 46 out of 50 states in terms of what we send to the federal government and what we get back in support. We're doing a terrible job there. And we're underfunding these two energy labs, which are critical to our renewable prospects for the future of our state. A state that has wind and solar in ample sources, but needs great battery technology for those to be universally accepted.
I have a really good one. This is for all the ladies. ERA, please discuss women's rights.
I think it would be hard to identify anybody who grew up with stronger women in their lives. I mean, my mother's like a walking testament to the ERA. Eunice Shriver, I remember going to Special Olympics in Ireland. In Ireland 30, 40 years ago, in many places, if you had a special needs kid, the outcome wasn't very good for them. There were 114,000 people in Croke Park there, celebrating the special needs kids in Ireland and from around the world. And Eunice went to the microphone and she spoke to everybody and they were so excited and she said, "You haven't done enough." And nothing should stop a strong and powerful woman with that level of drive from doing anything a man should do at the same pay with any restrictions. I support the
Where do you stand on single payer healthcare?
I sort of think that in the history and the future of healthcare, there's like a vanishing point, sort of an organized, like you have in a drawing class, that everything is designed around, and I think our future is single payer. And I assume that we'll get there by following some of the things that they're looking at in Massachusetts and elsewhere, which would be, expansion of Medicaid, and I think that's probably how we get there here in Illinois. So I think that's the future, and we ought to embrace it.
What is your view on prison reform and reentry programs? What direction would you take with IDOT? I already answered that again.
Yeah, I mean, well, the prison reform, like, I don't know why we control people's lives 24/7 and return them to the street with no better skills than they had going in. Plus, we take nonviolent offenders, put them in jail, and they come out with violent tendencies. And it's a crazy cycle that no thoughtful state would ever embrace.
How would you address the issue of gun violence and keeping guns out of the hands of those who shouldn't have them?
So I'm going to give a big speech on that subject tomorrow, but I'll preview it, I guess, a
Okay.
little bit. I'd say that, so we have a massive violence problem in Chicago. But Chicago, on a per capita basis, ranks 5th among other Illinois communities. This is not a problem that's unique and isolated to Chicago. It's happening around our state. And a lot of the issues around guns and gun violence is associated with the sheer number of guns that we have in our state. And many of those guns come from other states. Many of those guns are getting here through a variety of sources that other cities, other states would never allow to exist. I think we have to license the gun dealers. I think we need to identify that they're in fact gun dealers. I think we should, if you're on a no-fly list, you shouldn't get a gun. I think that we need to work with our friends in Indiana and tell them that, 60% of the guns used in crimes in Chicago come from out of state, mostly from Indiana. And if they don't start cleaning up their act, there are things that we can do to that. I think the rail lines that allow these guns to be stolen out of the gun trains repeatedly in Chicago with, no better security. They need to understand that they have an attractive nuisance and that they're going to end up with their assets at risk.
This one has a little bit of background. So there was a report from 2013. To feed the world, we would need to focus on local food production, not GMOs and insects. Also, figures vary, but over 50% of carbon in the atmosphere, deforestation and bad agricultural practices. The question is, as the food guy, what is your stance on the worldwide local food movement and bioagricultural to deal with both climate change and world hunger? Can you clarify that at all?
No, I would direct you to the 2016 study, Farm Illinois, which was organized by the University of Illinois with funds provided by the Chicago Community Trust, where I was the chair of the finance committee. We spent about $650,000 organizing a master plan around agriculture in the state of Illinois that harmonized the interests of the environmental movement, which largely paid for that study, with the needs of locally grown farmers, or farmers wanting to sell locally with big ag and the major institutions in biotech and the exchanges. It was like an awesome program. And I think in there's great data and great science around the issues that have been raised in the question. And I go to that report, and otherwise I can go through each part of that. I'd say I'm super science-based. I defer to the experts, and I think frankly, I think if we did not have access to GMO crops, we could not feed the world today.
Okay, we have 2 more questions. How would
Sorry,
you,
but I'm not going to walk away from it.
how would you attract industry to the inner city of Chicago to bring jobs to help reduce crime?
Okay, I like that question too. Okay, so there's only one. Let's start with the school thing. Nobody's. When I was a kid, and I graduated from school, college, me and all my friends, we all moved to where the jobs were. That's not how it works in the United States largely today. Today, the jobs are moving to where those highly educated kids are. That's what's going on in America. There's consolidation. If you have a pocket of highly educated kids, the jobs are going to move there. So we're lucky because Chicago's the largest college town in America. Tons of companies are moving, and more are starting. It's a great cycle of excellent outcomes for everybody involved. But if you're a high school kid and you're scoring a 12 on the ACT, you're not part of that. And nobody's going to want to move into a neighborhood where nobody there is educated enough to work in the workplace. If we don't fix that, we're going to further isolate those communities. Now, if you want to really build out a big economic development plan, there's only one thing that's worked in multiple cities over multiple decades, and that's the power of higher education. I've seen how it worked in Boston. Ted Kennedy and Tip O'Neill and John Kerry would go to Washington. They bring home federal government research grants. Places like Harvard and MIT and Brandeis. The researchers there would study basic research, but it would slough off applied research, and people would invest in those ideas. And they'd start little companies that employed people, that paid local taxes, that funded local schools, that educated a whole new generation ready to begin that cycle again and again. The 2 biggest employers in Boston, I guess, when I was younger, were Wang Computers and Digital Equipment Corporation. They were monstrous. They're both gone. They've gone out of business. My kids have never heard of them. That would have destroyed any other city in America. It doesn't matter. In Boston, if you have a college degree, you have a job. If you don't have a job, you have a headhunter trying to recruit you. That's true. In Boston, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, in Austin, Texas, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in Akron, Ohio, in Research Triangle, and in New York. All of the places where we support our universities. We're the biggest college town in America. We have great public colleges in every population center in the state. All we have to do is support those, and we can rebuild the entire economy. We can create jobs and companies and entire industries. The alumni of MIT, which is a dinker of a school compared to anything in the Big Ten, it's small. Their alumni have started 30,000 companies. That's what we want. All we have to do is support places like the University of Illinois, support places like Northwestern, U of C, and Argonne, and Fermi, and SIU, and ISU, and then all of the community college networks that feed into them and create this infrastructure that will make us an unstoppable economic force. That's the future of our state.
Last question.
So this is a question about the Jupiter tax. I guess you had said something about this on the radio.
yeah.
Can you explain how Illinois businesses are avoiding taxes and just a little bit about the Jupiter tax?
It's the Jupiter Island tax. There's this island in Florida called Jupiter Island. It's north of where Trump lives. But a ton of people from Illinois have moved down there. And it's interesting because there's one road that runs through the middle of it. And there's houses on either side, and they have these little wood pegs there, and then they have the name of the person who owns the house on it. It's like being in a country club or something. But anybody can drive through there. Anyways, those names now are like all the familiar names from the big families in Illinois. You can move to Florida, it turns out, and stop paying taxes in Illinois. You just can't live here more than 180 days a year. But you can live here 180 days a year. 180 is about 75% of 240. And 240 is about the number of days an executive works in an office. So these people, they can go to another state, go to Florida, say they don't live here, but keep their jobs, keep making money in Illinois, and not pay taxes. That's ridiculous. LeBron James, who plays for the Cleveland Cavaliers, when he goes to New York, he pays taxes in New York that day. New York State has a state income tax, so does New York City. New York City has an income tax, just for the city. He pays both. When he goes to California, he pays taxes in California. He plays LA, he pays in New York. Now that's a rough day for LeBron because they have a really progressive tax there. You make more than $1 million a year, you're paying 13%. LeBron makes more than $1 million a year, so he's paying 13% the day he plays LA. It doesn't matter whether he wins or loses, it's still kind of rough on him, but he's still making more than $1 million a year, I guess, if you don't care. When I worked at a publicly traded company, if I went to New York, I paid taxes in New York that day. If I went to California, I paid taxes. I filed in 9 different states some years. It's easy breezy, lickety split, the accounting group just did it. Every big company operates like that. It's not a hassle, it's totally easy. We're the only state, the big state, that doesn't charge that tax. You want to know about these people moving to Indiana or moving to Wisconsin? Yeah, there's no economy in Indiana, not like the one in Illinois. There aren't jobs, they're not moving there for jobs. I mean, maybe a few are, but you can move to Indiana, you can move to Wisconsin and not pay taxes in Illinois. That's nuts. Those people are stealing from us. They're mooching off of our economy. They're taking the things that we pay for, they're using them themselves and not paying their fair share. We should put an end to that. We should pass a Jupiter Island tax and say, look, if you work in our state, you pay, just like the rest of us do.
So again, if you want to hear Mr. Kennedy speak again tomorrow at College at 10 o'clock is the forum. We want to thank Mr. Kennedy for joining us one more time.
At that Paris state. So I'm giving another speech elsewhere. Do you want to?
Where?
What's
Where
that?
is it? Yeah. Where you?
Windsor Park Lutheran Church.
At 2 o'clock.
Okay. 2619 East 76th Street, Chicago.
Okay, we'll make sure that we advertise that on our Facebook
Right off the
page.
deadline.
Real quick, we are having a new logo contest, so if anyone is an artist and wants to join us, we're asking submissions to be sent in by July 31st. We are going to have a prize packet for that as well. If you want to donate to that, feel free. We already have a first donation of 4 White Sox tickets plus parking, courtesy of Ms. Pat Artman. So if you want to get it on that, let us know. Also, if there's plenty of food, so please feel free. If you have someone that want to make the honey pot, please do so. Thank you so much for coming. If you want to stick around and socialize, feel free to be here for a couple of hours. Thanks again. Have a great night.